Hi, I'm Jody Fisher, and I'm here at Los Angeles Music Academy, where I teach the jazz guitar classes. And I thought I'd give you a little something to work on today. The road to jazz guitar is wrought with a lot of work and a lot of practice. The guitar is a difficult instrument, especially in jazz, and it doesn't give up information easily. But every once in a while, you can come up with an idea that you can actually get some immediate gratification out of, and this is what I'll show you now. A lot of students come up and complain that their solos are based on scales and they sound like scales when they're playing. Well, if you get into arpeggios and working with arpeggios, you can a lot of times get rid of that scaly sound to your solos. So one methodology that I like to use myself and teach, I take a scale, a major scale for instance, and I look for all the diatonic arpeggios in there. In other words, I would look for a C major 7th arpeggio. So all I'm really doing is playing all the C's, E's, G's, and B's in that particular scale fingering. And then I would go on to the 2 chord or D minor 7, and then the 3 chord and learn all of them. Now once you have these particular arpeggios, now you've got something to work with. Let's use an A minor 7 arpeggio in this position. So that will look like this. Okay, so those are all the A's, C's, E's, and G's in that particular C major scale fingering. Now one way to get ideas is to find little figures around those particular notes that sound good. Now if I use the concept of upper and lower neighbor tones, for instance, I can use any note a half step below the arpeggio tone and a whole step above the arpeggio tone. So in other words, if my arpeggio tone is the C, which is the flat third of the chord, I can play this note before it and this note before it. So if I come up with a little finger pattern, for instance, we know that that's going to work over an A minor 7 chord. Now if I use my second finger for each note in the arpeggio, I can play with those same surrounding neighbor tones and always hit the right note. In other words, landing on C, my next note is A. The next note is G. Next note is E, etc. across the entire string set. So now I have so I have a nice little line that works well over an A minor 7. Now you don't have to limit yourself to those kinds of patterns. I could do something like, or even get a little more outside with it. What if I took a simple triad shape and just execute that from each note in the arpeggio? That's going to work too. And sure, there's notes that really don't belong with an A minor 7, but that's what causes the tension. But the first note of every triplet there was an A minor 7 arpeggio. Another example might be something like this. So almost any pattern is going to work based around an arpeggio shape. So I suggest first learn a major scale, get the arpeggios from that major scale, and then experiment with upper and lower neighbor tones and other figures that you come up with based on those shapes.